Okay, it's time to get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining our live lecture today. My name is Isaac, and I'll be the lead instructor for the lecture. And today's topic is going to be career skills. So let's go ahead and let's start off by talking about career planning. Okay, so career programmers are a lot like doctors, right? They tend to specialize in one specific field. Okay, but they're also like high schoolers in the way that they don't really know what field they want to get into, right? They just know they want to get into one. So that's okay if you don't know exactly what you want right now. You got time to figure it out, but just know that you should be thinking about that, and you shouldn't wait until you're a senior developer to figure it out, right? So there is a method called SWOT that helps us figure out where we fit in based on 4 factors. Okay, so those are strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So let's go ahead and let's go over each of those. Okay, so examples of strengths would be if maybe you're a creative person, maybe you're motivating. Okay, weaknesses would be maybe you're impatient, maybe you're outspoken. Opportunities, current ones right now are things like front end, back end, and then threats would be things like criminal history, right? So if you want to work for the FBI, but you've got 5 felonies, you probably aren't going to be able to do that. So you shouldn't pursue a career path you aren't going to be able to, end up doing in the first place, right? So you want to make sure that aligns up. Unemployment's next thing. You want to make sure you don't get into a field that's just going to be replaced by robots or something else in the next 5 years, right? So look at the field. Just because it's growing right now doesn't mean that it's a stable field to get into. Okay, and then finance is another one, right? So some companies, right, you're going to have like a master's degree in software engineering, right? Even if you're an awesome programmer, they don't care. They still want a degree. So if you have the means to go to those universities and pursue those degrees, and that lines up, great. But if you don't, maybe you need to look at other career paths and other fields that don't require those higher forms of education. Okay. All right, now let's talk about soft skills. Okay, so the vast majority of people who become programmers have several other non-technical skills that have been acquired through previous employment and education and are transferable to the programming job. Okay, so things such as interpersonal skills, how you act with others, organizational skills, how you approach tasks, leadership skills, how you motivate and direct others, and communication skills, how you communicate with others. Okay, so it's very rare you meet someone who got into programming who didn't do something else before then, right? Whether it was washing dishes or it was taking phone calls, doesn't matter. Whether you know it or not, during your previous employment, you gained some soft skills, and those actually can be used to increase your value to potential employers. Okay, because the technical skills are important, of course, but there's going to be a lot of people with technical skills out there, especially more and more these days. So you got to offer more to make yourself more appealing, right? And so bring your soft skills to the table too to give yourself the best chance. All right, now let's talk about your resume, the tech resume. Okay, so when you're building your resume, keep 3 things in mind, and they're called the 3 C's of resume building, right? So it should be clean. So easy to read, proofread, not cluttered, right? That's pretty simple these days. Word editors, with grammar check and spell check, everything else, it should be able to, be in a clean format, no problem. It needs to be concise, okay? So it shouldn't drag on, shouldn't be 2 pages or anything. That nature should be short, to the point. Everything's relevant to the job, and you use action words like developing, right? Okay, so and last, it needs to be convincing. Okay, so you need to showcase your skills and experience, right? You need to put links on there, right, for them to be able to navigate to and to verify that everything holds weight on that resume, right? But while you're trying to convince them of your skill, don't try to oversell it, right? And use big words like you don't use in your regular vocabulary, right? Because those are red flags, and they'll think you're trying to compensate for the fact that you're not a good developer or something, right? So, you know, keep to yourself. That's the best approach in that regard. Okay, so although the resume process is subjective, right? Every hiring manager's got their own method, right? Statistically speaking, you have 7 to 10 seconds of viewing time by the hiring manager. So knowing that, the focus should be on the top half of the resume, okay? So there is 3 things you should include at a minimum, okay? And that is your GitHub and LinkedIn profiles, okay? Links to both of those. Next, you should list your tech skills, okay? You know, just languages, frameworks, tooling, you know, you learned. And project examples, right? Things you've actually built or hosted live that they can, you know, actually go play with. Okay, so let's go ahead and start by taking a look at a bad example of a resume and what not to do. Okay, so first things first, we've got an ugly blue graphic over here, right? Totally unnecessary, you know, just kind of takes up some space. And then it's not concise, right? It's 2 pages long, very, very heavy, very thick. At the top here, they listed their GitHub, but they did not list their LinkedIn. Okay, so red flag there, because if this hiring manager is non-technical, then GitHub is really not going to help them at all. So you have to provide GitHub and LinkedIn for both kinds of hiring managers. Okay. Next, they listed their skills, which this part isn't bad. I mean, you know, the technologies and tooling, like it's pretty right on, and it's listed in the top half of the resume, so that's good. But they put education before projects, and you notice this is like, you know, the first half of the resume ends right about here. So in reality, we should put projects before education. And the reason being is because for a lot of these hiring managers, it's hard for them to know how good of the developer you are based on your education, because sometimes you'll sit in a classroom for 4 years learning theory, but you'll never actually build anything. And then sometimes you'll build stuff all day, but you won't learn any theory, right? Or a little of both. But for them, the proof is really in the pudding, so to speak, when they look at your project, right? Because then they know what an end user feels like, and they know if it works or not. And so placing links and you know, descriptions, you know, for projects is a lot more valuable to a lot of these, you know, hiring managers on a resume, at least, than the education. Now, that's the top half. Not to say we can't include education, you know, below that, but you know, the top 3 things, you know, should be those we mentioned, right? Okay, so that is an example of a bad resume. So let's go ahead and take a look at a good resume. Okay, so right off the bat, we notice we have a LinkedIn and a GitHub, right? And that way, hiring manager, if they're technical or non-technical, either way, they'll be able to, you know, evaluate you. Okay, next we have our tech skills, right? Languages, frameworks, libraries, right? All that good stuff. Okay, and then you notice projects comes next after that, right? Only a couple, but you know, no big deal. Nice little descriptions, add some links. And then, you know, we add education under that, some other relevant, you know, soft skill, you know, experience, and you know, volunteering. Okay, but no more than that, right? There's no second page, nothing like that. It's a really easy, nice snapshot of an individual. Okay, so try to follow that kind of same pattern when you're building out yours. Okay, so now let's talk about things to never include on your resume. Okay, so misspelled words or bad grammar. You know, again, this should be very easy to, you know, not have that, because programs, you know, today on everyone's computers make it just so easy to spell check. Okay, so if you do have those on your resume, it just really says you're lazy. Okay, so make sure you take the time to proofread it. Oops. Okay, next, never include personal information like your social security number. Although they might ask for this information when, say, you're doing a background check or they're actually performing, you know, the payroll, the hiring, right? But they're not, you know, you don't need to put that on your resume itself, because this resume is normally handed out, you know, physically or through an email. And either way, those can get lost or fall into the wrong hands. So yeah, keep your social security and other personal info off your resume. Don't include things like jokes, right? Even if they're technical jokes, like I like to hack the FBI in my free time, just ignore that, right? Leave that as is. And just show your professional side, leave the humor out of it. Don't include irrelevant work or job experience, right? So if you babysat for Aunt Sally in the summer of 2003, don't include that because it's not relevant to, the actual job you're applying for. Don't include meaningless words you don't normally use in your everyday vocabulary. Again, they're really easy to spot, and they normally throw up red flags in a lot of these hiring, personnel minds. Okay, so next, don't include reasons for leaving previous positions. Although this is something that's pretty common asked at interviews or in applications, don't just offer that information up front. Okay, so next, don't include hobbies. If they hire you, they'll get to know you. They'll get to know your hobbies, but again, it's considered a space waster, right? Because we want to, we only have so much landscape on this resume, so we got to put the really important stuff. And hobbies is not one of those really important things. Next, don't include salary requirements, right? This just makes you look greedy. That's all you're thinking about is the money, and they want to believe you're there for a bigger purpose, right? To help their company grow and get to the next stage. Okay, so that being said, if they like you and they want to hire you, they'll ask your salary requirements, right? But don't put that on your resume. It's not good. Don't put references. This one often throws people off because I thought everyone wants references, and the thing is, if they want them, they'll ask for them. But it's considered a space waster, and we should put other more relevant information like education. Okay. Although I always like to include something like excellent references available upon request, right? A simple one-liner like that, there's no harm. That doesn't take up any space. Okay, and last, don't include unprofessional contact information, right? If your email was built when you were in high school and something inappropriate, right? You need to change it. Otherwise, you're going to have real hard time getting people to reply to you or take you seriously. Okay. Next, let's talk about networking. Okay, so networking is the #1 way to get a job in the tech industry. While online networking is great, in-person networking is even more effective. Why? Because the hidden market, which is 80% of the jobs that are not posted online. Okay, so it's very odd for an industry, that's so technical to not post, so many jobs online, right? But it's because it's hard to qualify candidates in this industry. It really is. And so for a lot of these companies, it's a lot easier just to have their developers refer another developer, right? Instead of having to go out there and, hope that they find one that fits the mold. Most of the time, internal references are how that goes down. Okay, so how you can meet these other developers, which will then refer you when they have openings, is going to meetups. Okay. And meetups are everywhere, all over now, okay? And so you can just go and you can learn, something typically about tech, and then you can mingle for an hour or so and, have snacks and drinks and, talk with, other individuals about, what you learned or whatever else, okay? But it's a great way to get yourself out there to let people know you're looking for work, to, give people your number, all that great stuff. So when they do have opportunities come up, which is very often, they'll think of you and they'll bring you in for an interview, right? Okay, so a couple of really effective sites that we found to use is meetup.com and eventbrite.com. Okay, you really just search for coding meetups in your local area, and you'd be surprised at some of the places way out in the middle of nowhere have meetups, right? So even if you think they won't have meetups near you, go ahead and take a search anyway, because they're just everywhere these days. Okay, and they're normally always free, and very, very beneficial if you're looking to get into a job. Okay. All right, so now let's talk about finding the right fit. Okay, so it's always a best practice to do your research and learn about an organization before you apply for a position. Okay, it takes 5 minutes to Google, guys, and look at a company's Wikipedia or whatever else it may be, right? But there's a couple of reasons this is important. Okay, first being is because during the interview, it's good to look like you know what you're talking about in regards to the company, right? You're interested in their background or their mission or whatever else it may be, and you're not just there for the paycheck, right? So this adds kind of a genuine sense of purpose. Whereas another reason is everyone's culture is different. Although, these days things are pretty laid back tech-wise. Maybe that's not your style, right? Maybe you've always gone to work with a suit and tie, and that's, how you want to keep going to work, right? So if that's the case, then, you need to make sure that if the job you're applying for matches that culture, because if it doesn't, you're not going to be happy, the employer's not going to be happy, right? So do your due diligence and don't just shotgun every job opening ever, because the fact is, being able to do the job is only half of what makes you compatible with that company. The other half is who you are as a person, your culture, right? Are the other team members going to like you? Or are you going to be like, feel like you hate going to work? Because, it's one of those things where you want to make sure that you have a good experience as well as that employer, right? So do your research. It doesn't take too much time. Okay, so now let's talk about the online job search. So we said in-person networking, that is the most effective way. You got to do it. You got to do it. You got to get out there. However, you also want to apply for the online jobs because they're definitely valid and people get hired all the time because of them. Okay. I even had some developer the other day told me he got hired from Twitter. I mean, someone put a tweet out. They were looking for developers, right? You would be amazed where you see job offers. I've seen them in Reddit before, but I mean, that being aside the point, just know that the opportunities online are very good too. Okay, so there are tons of job boards. You can take your pick and increase your chances as much as possible. But the 4 we recommend are Indeed, Monster, Dice. Okay, these all allow you to sign up for automatic alerts, all that stuff. And then Craigslist is, as you know, more general classifieds. But what's effective about Craigslist is a lot of startups, a lot of smaller companies use it when they're bringing on like junior developers and stuff, and they don't tend to post on these bigger ones, because they can't afford it, right? So you'll be surprised, how many listings you'll find on Craigslist as well. Okay, so really, expand your options, and it's whatever it's going to get you in front of that employer, right? Make sure you utilize that service. All right, so let's reiterate on email and voicemail, right? We already talked about don't have inappropriate contact information on your resume, okay? But that also goes for your application and everything else that has to do with the processing of hiring with that employer, right? So if that employer wants to call you back, is your voicemail going to be appropriate, right? Just because your email doesn't mean the other one is, right? So when you're doing a job search, it's good practice to adjust these things to make sure that if someone does want to get a hold of you, they aren't put off by whatever it may be, right? Even if it was a joke voicemail, maybe they're having a bad day and they decide not to hire you because you were the last straw, right? So that being said, clean up the email, clean up the voicemail as needed to give yourself the best chance possible. All right, now let's talk about LinkedIn. Okay, so by now you probably already know what LinkedIn is. And if you don't, you definitely need to get a LinkedIn account. But LinkedIn is the world's largest networking platform for business professionals. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at a good LinkedIn profile. Alrighty, so let's just go down the line here. You'll notice the first thing is the photo, right? The photo is recently new. You can tell it was taken with a decent camera. It's not from 10 years ago, right? And the gentleman is smiling, okay? So smiling is a really key factor because at the end of the day, people don't care how technical you are. If you're a grouch, no one wants to work with you, right? So just smile, get one photo with a smile, right? And that's going to increase your chances 10x. Okay. Next, give a simple headline, right? Tell people what you're excited about and the cool things you want to do. Summary is a little about me blurb, right? Just give them a couple paragraphs on your background. Experience is very much like a digital resume, right? Where you just put your actual timelines and companies. Organizations, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? If you're part of any alumni organizations, anything like that. Education, right? If you went to coder camps or WazU or any schooling, right? Harvard, Yale, those are great to put. Definitely add to your credibility. Volunteer experience is really good because people like selfless individuals, right? People who are willing to volunteer for things without getting paid, right? So definitely list that, even if it's just simple things like a blood drive, whatever it may be. Those things actually do really add to your value. Skills and expertise. This is one of my favorite sections, right? Because you come in here and you list all your skills, right, one by one, and then you have your connections come in and endorse them, right? And the more people who endorse your skills, the more weight and validation it adds that you can actually perform that said skill, okay? And so for hiring managers and potential employers, that adds a lot of peace of mind for when they're calling you into the interview, right? Because they're like, hey, look, this person's got 200 endorsements for JavaScript or C# or whatever it may be, right? They obviously, I doubt all 200 of those people are lying for them, right? So they probably actually do know what they're talking about in that regard. Honors and awards, right? Things you're proud of and that you earned, definitely show those off. Okay, courses, right? So maybe you just took specific specialty courses that weren't necessarily degree centered, but they definitely did add some technical certification under your belt, right? Definitely list those. Projects, they're one of my favorite sections, right? Because you get to list your projects, your collaborators, you get to link it, timeline, description, all this good stuff, and really give employers and hiring managers a taste of what you're made of. And then recommendations. Okay, this is very similar to endorsements here, right? Except this is like a written endorsement, right? People get to describe why they think a potential employer should hire you in the future, right? Because it's based on their experience with you as a professional. Okay, so moving right along, let's take a look at a good example of a GitHub profile. So by now, you should have a GitHub profile. And whether you modified it or not, that's maybe so, maybe not, right? But let's just go ahead and go over this this one. Okay, so this individual, first thing you see is the smile, right? Again, that's going to take you a long way. So make sure that both your LinkedIn and your GitHub have a smiling picture. Next, it's a short but sweet description, right? Check out my projects, junior front-end developer, selfie queen, JavaScript, right? Nothing too, crazy, a little quirky, which is okay. This is a kind of a more developer space, okay? You'll notice, she has a good amount of followers, right? So that adds to her credibility. Her, obviously other people, are influenced by her. She has a good amount of repositories. I can come in here and actually explore her source code. So that's why it's important to commit often. Down here, we can actually see, you know, she has a high amount of contributions in the last year. You can see she's actually an active coder, right? So this is what you're going for when you're setting up your GitHub account. You want it to be, you know, of this caliber. All right, now let's talk about online branding. Okay, so in the tech-driven era, employers often look at online sources that don't have anything to do with you as a business professional, but rather who you are as a person in general. Okay, so for example, if they have two developers and they both have the same skill level and they both like you a lot, but they can't quite decide which one to hire, what they might do is look at both of your Facebook profiles. And if one person is drinking every night and posting their pictures and another person is just maybe, you know, posting pictures of them hanging out with their family, right? Or something to that regard, more than likely developer B is going to get the job over developer A, because from a moral standpoint, it just looks like there's going to be more problems with the first developer. Even though that could be totally bogus, it really is up to the employer how they, you know, go about that. So to avoid shooting yourself in the foot, right, make sure if you have a, you know, kind of a risque profile, you clean it up, right, in a way that if a potential employer looked at it, you wouldn't be scared or ashamed at all, because there's really nothing degrading or, you know, compromising on there. So that's, you know, in regards to bad branding. Okay, so how you can have good branding is something like a high number of profile followers, right? We were just saying, you know, the previous slide with the GitHub profile, you know, that young lady had a high number of profile followers, right? And so that's not a bad thing, because, you know, it shows that, you know, this person, you know, is influential, right? So make sure that you're always working on increasing your good branding, right? And promoting, you know, tweets and whatever about your, you know, your blogs you read and things to that nature, and make sure that, you know, you're increasing your web presence, but you're not, you know, degrading it in that way. Okay. Right, moving right along, let's talk about something called the elevator pitch. Okay, if you've ever been in a job interview, which you probably have, you have most likely been asked the question, tell me about yourself. Okay, and most of us just kind of puke out the first thing that comes to our mind, right? Our name is this, we were born here, we like to do this, and, you know, we really want this job because, you know, we need the money, right? Whatever it might be. But it normally doesn't sound prepared or well executed. And this actually can be avoided. You actually can deliver a very confident executed answer with a little bit of preparation, okay? And how you can prepare is creating something called an elevator pitch. Okay, so the basic structure of an elevator pitch is it's 30 to 60 seconds, right? Not too short, but not too long. You want to capture their attention, but not lose it. You want to tell them what you do well, so right, your skills. You want to tell them what you want to do, your goals. And you tell them why you want to do that, your intent. Okay, and there's no secret words to use that's going to make, you know, you succeed in this way. Just be yourself and cover these basic points, and you should be okay. But it's a lot better, needless to say, than just, you know, throwing out whatever information comes to mind. Okay, so now let's talk about the tech interview. Okay, so technical interviews come in all shapes and sizes, and there's no one way to prepare. Unfortunately, I wish there was, and that would be just the easiest way to get students in, teach them the secret way, and then get them hired. And, you know, it would be just a wonderful world. But there's not a secret way, right? There's many ways of interviews that come in all shapes and sizes. So to prepare, there's a series of online services that, you know, can help you improve in different aspects. Okay, so CoderByte, really good. It gives you medium, easy, hard questions, right? Depending on your skill level, and you can increase those over time, and you can take a daily challenge to keep yourself sharp and keep your skill level increasing in that way. And also, there's a lot of small challenges in CoderByte that you'll see pop up at job interviews. Capitalize the first letter of every word, stuff like that. So it's good to go here and get that as a kind of a normal feeling, so to speak. Next, Code Fights is another good one. Put you on the spot with their developer to build something, and it gets you used to being put on the spot, right? Because that's when a lot of us fail, is when we're put on the spot, because we don't practice being put on the spot. We wait until the day of the interview. So Code Fights can really help alleviate a lot of that tension and that apprehension by practicing having that attention on you anyway. And then interviewcake.com, they'll actually teach you how to methodically work your way through tech interview, right? So based on the question, they'll teach you how to break it apart and deliver the best case outcomes. All right, and then let's touch up on let's wrap up with the subject of follow-up. Okay, so as in most industries, it's good to follow up with the hiring managers on your submitted applications as well as your previous interviews. Keep in mind that the hiring manager is often cycling through tons of applications, so it helps to have someone reach out to them to make sure you're more rememberable. Okay, and this is very true. Hiring managers will have two developers they want to hire, or they'll have one developer they want to hire but two candidates, and maybe they just can't decide which one they want, and they get a follow-up call from developer A, right? And they don't get a follow-up call from developer B. Okay, so developer A just tipped the scales because they showed more initiative than developer B, right? So more likely on the job, that's going to be the same case. So they're probably going to hire the first one. So sometimes that follow-up is all it takes to get your final push and finally into that job. Okay. So that being said, let's go ahead and take a moment to open up the floor to see if anyone has any questions. Okay, so the floor is open. If you have questions, feel free to ask away. No questions so far? Okay. If that's the case, then thanks everyone for coming. Have a great day, and happy job hunting.